Well, we on the hot seat today have Pine Labs-owned Setu, which has unveiled a large language model called Sesame, which is specifically designed for the banking, financial services and insurance sectors in collaboration with homegrown AI research firm Sarvam AI. Now, the company calls it a ChatGPT moment for the financial services space. Sesame is going to leverage the data ecosystem enabled by India's digital infrastructure to power features such as improved credit underwriting, fraud detection, loan monitoring, and so on. So for more on this, I'm now joined by Nikhil Kumar, the co-founder of Setu, to tell us more about this. Nikhil, thanks very much for being here on Startup Street. You say that with Sesame, you've had what you call a ChatGPT moment in the financial services space. Start by telling our viewers briefly about Sesame and why do you think it's going to provide a breakthrough for the BFSI sector?
Thank you so much for having me today. I think the reason why we use the word ChatGPT is because ChatGPT was one of those things which brought generative AI to life, to popular, imagination of what generative AI can really do. Around like a year ago, we started our research on what does generative AI in the BFSI sector really mean, right? So how is this going to be used in the BFSI space? And then our research led to like two large, learnings. So the first one was, there's a lot of data that financial institutions today have. There's a lot of data that's also getting unlocked because of frameworks like Account Aggregator, digital public infrastructure, as you mentioned, that's already available in India. And the first use case that we realized, was how do we help people enrich this data? So the big core insight for us has been that just raw data is just not enough to make intelligent and smarter decisions. The first use case and a safe and a responsible way of using generative AI in the BFSI space was to take raw data and enrich this data. And the second part of this, which we realized, is today when we think about banking experiences, especially when you're talking, everyone's been thinking about this, that it'll solve for customer support, et cetera. But we actually think that today banking comes as a post facto decision. You decide to buy a house and then you start looking for which bank to work with. You decide to buy a car and then you look for financing options.
Sure.
We actually think the future of this is actually going to be flipped, where every Indian actually has the opportunity to get a responsible financial advisor who can actually help you through this purchase decision as well. And today banks have, banks today kind of like are limited to like what is the loan amount, et cetera. But imagine if you could talk to a trusted financial advisor and say, I'm looking to buy an AC. Should I buy a 3-star AC or should I buy a 5-star AC, right? So this is why we think that the interaction layer consumers will have with banks will completely change.
Yeah. Well, very briefly, since we're running out of time, give us a sense of the kind of data you've trained this model on and how soon are you going to launch it in the market? And are there specific use cases beyond BFSI as well?
We've actually focused entirely on BFSI as a segment because it's a large segment. It's one of the largest problems that we have in India to solve. So what we did with Sarvam is to basically work with them to create like a foundational model and a fine-tuned model on Indian data and Indian bank schemas, the way our financial data looks like. This is actually already available to a bunch of our customers. We're working with some of the top tier banks in India, where we are doing pilots with them on using this data to make better lending decisions. This is where we're going to start with. We have a handful of customers that we're already working with. And in the coming months, we're also going to work with Sarvam and build capabilities of building these customer interaction layers, which we think is going to be it'll redefine the way people, interact with banking systems and institutions.
Okay, and would you tell us about some of the obstacles you came across in ensuring that there is compliance and data security standards while training and deploying Sesame? Because, how does it address some of the potential biases or inaccuracies when we talk about LLMs, given, specifically the complexity, the sensitivity of financial data?
Absolutely. I think one of the reasons why we had to do this or build this was because nothing like this existed. RBI is very, very stringent about data localization, data privacy, and most importantly, like purpose-based consented use of data. So the way we have built a model is, in this particular use case of using it for enrichment, we've basically reduced the scope of the model to do one thing really, really well, which is, enrichment of data so that this enriched data can be used in various different use cases. So one is, just defining the role of what the LLM is going to do, right? Generative AI or LLMs today are so general. They have so much general intelligence in them. We've actually toned them down to say, this is the only specific task that you need to do, and they do it really, really well. On the user interaction layer, this is where a lot of the challenges on biases and conversations on hallucinations are, a larger, it's a bigger problem to solve for. And we think there's a lot of, work that's involved in not just, in building it for Indian language, English, but also like, solving for these biases and hallucinations for even multiple Indian languages. So how do you take in input from customers who would speak in various different Indian languages? How do we interpret that, and how do you respond? So there's a lot of work to be done, but we are seeing a lot of promising results.
Well, Nikhil, it'll be exciting to see what you do with this. Thank you very much for your time here. And we wish you all the very best with Sesame and, of course, the future initiatives of Setu. On that note, we're going to take a short break right now. But up next, Galaxy I has signed an MOU with the National Space Promotion and Authorization Center. What are the contours of that deal? We'll get you the details on the other side.